first off, I'd like to welcome and thanks those that have joined right now. So I do see there are quite a few people here. And yeah, so I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to participate in this design tips webinar, which is focused around designing in the cloud with MachineBuilder. So I'll actually just jump right into it to cover to showcase what I'll be covering today throughout the rest of the presentation. Switching this over to here. So going over the agenda, there are four main goals that I'd like to get through for this presentation or for this webinar. And the first being to show you guys how to get started with a new design in MachineBuilder. Secondly, to showcase how you can design with MachineBuilder's click and click interface, so also showcase what that means. Thirdly, be able to showcase some of these smart design tools that are built into Vention's 3D design software. And finally, once you have completed your designs, show you how you can publish the designs to the community to get feedback and share with other users on Vention's platform. So throughout the presentation, if you would like to interact, there are a few ways you can do this. First, through the Q&A section. Second, through the chat as well. I will have my colleague here, Rowan, on the call that will be moderating these and seeing if there are any questions. So feel free to post those throughout the presentation. And finally, at the end, there will be a chance for you guys to open up your mic and ask any questions about what you've seen throughout the presentation. So without further ado, I'll actually jump right into it on the first portion, which was getting started with your first assignment in MachineBuilder. So once you do create your Vention account and get to the Vention landing page or the Vention homepage, this is what you'll see over here. To get started with your first design, or if you're more custom and already know how to do it, you click on the green button in the top right corner of the screen, which says Design Now. Clicking this will open this window over here, which you'll fill in with the required information such as design name, description, as well as any other collaborators. Once you're done this, you click Start Designing, and it will bring you into the MachineBuilder design space itself. So from here, I'm actually going to switch over to the MachineBuilder to showcase what I'll be designing throughout the webinar today. So switching over. So over here on screen, what you should see is a robotic tending cell or a robot work cell. So essentially, it's a workstation with a UR3 robot that you see on screen here, as well as a linear actuator and enclosure. As I go through this presentation, the purpose is to showcase how you can get from a blank design, so essentially from nothing on screen, to a fully finished design that you see on screen over here. And the way I'll be doing this is by elaborating on the tips and tricks and all of the great features that MachineBuilder has as they come up through the design process. So from here, I'll actually go over to a blank design to actually get started with this. So once you do open MachineBuilder, be it for your first time or even the second or third time, this is what you'll see on screen. So you have your general toolbars on the top, as well as parts library on the left. I'll elaborate on this a little bit more later on. The first thing that I really would recommend checking out once you do get in the MachineBuilder is going over to the menu section in the top left corner of your screen and looking at these settings. So opening up the settings here, you do have quite a few different toolbars and sections that you can go through. What I really would recommend is going down to the behavior section over here. If you are new to 3D design software, you can go to the change default mouse settings and leave it at Vention default. However, if you are used to 3D design software, such as using SolidWorks, Creo, AutoCAD, or even CATIA, you can switch the mouse settings to those as well. In my case, since I've been using Vention for quite a while, I'm going to keep with the Vention default. The other thing that I really would recommend checking out, also in the menu section in the top left corner, going to the Help drop-down menu and going to the keyboard shortcuts. So essentially what these are all the shortcuts and hotkeys they can use to speed up your design process in MachineBuilder. As you can see, there are quite a few that deal with, say, assembling, the 3D navigation of the design tool itself, how you can edit, as well as different viewing options. Again, I'd recommend or even invite you guys to do this on your own to go check out what each of these do, but I will be touching on the most important ones as I go through the design process. So the first thing that I'd recommend when starting a brand new design is think about your design methodology. And this includes what you're looking to design and how you plan on designing it. I'd say usually the best case is to start off with a bare minimum, even a napkin sketch, a PDF drawing, or a written document with all these specifications that you're looking to have. Obviously, in our case, if I switch back over, I do have a finished design that I'm working towards. So this I can kind of jump over a little bit. So going back to the MachineBuilder over here, I'll actually explain a little bit why we call this a click and click interface. So first, to do this, I'll actually do this by importing a first part. So on the left over here, you have the parts library. This is essentially where you'll find Vention's catalog of 1,000+ parts that you can actually design with in your design space. This includes structural and framing, some robots, linear motion, some wheels, specific cabling, pneumatics, etc. Again, since we have 1,000+ parts, if you are curious, I would recommend checking these out on your own, either in CAD over here or in the parts library that we do have on our Vention webpage. Now, to showcase the click and click interface. So essentially what we call that is to actually add or design tools, it really takes 2 clicks. So in our case, I'm going to go to the aluminum extrusion profiles that we have up here, which really make up the skeleton of most of the structures that both myself and all of you guys will be designing with in the future. So what I like to do is bring in this 45 by 45 millimeter extrusion. In order to do that, all I have to do is first click on it once, drag it over to the design space, and to actually drop it into the design space, left click once again. So that's how easy it is to actually add parts to your design and what we call it a click and click interface. One thing you may have noticed when that popped in is I did have these arrows on either end. So each of these actually allow you to resize your extrusion profiles once you've already brought them into the design space. Say, for example, in this case, this is a 585 millimeter length. If I wanted one that's a little bit longer, I don't have to go back to the parts library, find a longer one, bring it back in, delete the original. I can actually resize it on the go. So in my case, I am looking to resize this to a length of 720 millimeters because I know that's the size of the table that I'm working towards. To do this, you can left click on the part itself and then go to the resize option over here in the navigation compass. You do also have the option if you right click and select resize extrusion. So in my case, it's as easy as dragging it to the size that I want. You'll notice as I do this, it does jump in increments of 45 millimeters. The reason being is Vention's ecosystem is designed around a 45 millimeter increment. If you notice, we have the 45 by 45 millimeter extrusion, 45 by 90, 90 by 90, and even a smaller one over here that's a 22.5 by 22.5 or half of 45. I'll elaborate a bit more on this later on in the design process. So now that we have our first extrusion over here, I'll bring in the second extrusion that I'm looking to have, which is a 45 by 90 millimeter. The reason being, if I switch over to my original design over here, is the extrusion table that I have is built out of our slightly larger profile, which is a bit more structurally sound. So I'll bring this in to my design space. Now, as opposed to standard design tools where normally you say bring the design in or bring a part in, drop it into space, select the surface that you would like to make sure they're all coincident and such. Vention's Machine Builder does this all for you in a much quicker and easier way. So for example, I'll delete this part, bring it back in, and attach it to the extrusion. You saw in the other design how I'd like to do that. And the way that that's done is simply by dragging your mouse over to the location that you would like to attach it to. If I zoom in a little bit here, you'll notice that there is a navigation compass that appears, which gives me the various orientations. So it does try to propose the most likely orientation that you're looking for. But say I wanted to face a different direction, you can click on the arrow keys on your keyboard or on the arrow keys on screen to actually cycle through the various options. Once you're happy with your selection, you press the green check mark or the enter key on your keyboard to confirm the location. Again, you can see here, I do have the ability to resize. You can see it's only on one side of the extrusion this time since it's constrained on the left. In this case, I'll resize a little bit to 720 millimeters as well. The next great thing about the design tool of Machine Builder is you're not constrained once you actually place a part in the design tool. Say I really wanted to place this extrusion on the other side instead of on the left side. I don't have to delete it, bring it again, attach it to the opposite side. All of our parts do have relative degrees of freedom that you can then adjust in the design tool itself. So if I left click on it, you'll notice that this slider does appear. In this case, I can actually slide it along the available travel of the extrusion to get to the other side if that's what was my original intention. Again, you'll notice that it does jump in increments of 45 millimeters. The reason being is the design increment. So in the top toolbar, that's the first time that I'll actually go over here, you have the units tab over here. If I do the drop-down menu, notice that there's 45, 22.5, 11.25, 5, and 1. Essentially what these are the snapping increments, or the design increments that you can use while designing. Say I switch mine to 5 millimeters and then go back to the degree of freedom. As I slide, you'll notice now that it'll jump every 5 millimeters instead of every 45. So this does give more precision to actually design with. If I switch back over to 45, I do notice there is a bubble in the chat. Oh, perfect, we're good. So switch back over to 45. The reason being that since everything is designed around that 45 millimeter increment, it's recommended to go back to that once you've done your fine tuning. So from here, the next feature that I'm going to showcase is the ability to reinsert a part. So again, as opposed to say, normally, if I want to build out this entire table, if you're new to the design tool, you'd go back to the extrusion profile over here, bring it back in, make sure it's on the right size, resize it to the extrusion that you want, and repeat that process another 6 or 7 times. This can actually be sped up by using the I key on your keyboard or the insert key. What the I key does is it actually reinserts the last click part in MachineBuilder. So for example, if I have the 45 by 90 millimeter extrusion and I press I, it will reinsert that or essentially attach it to the end of my cursor, and I can use that part again. If I say click the 45 by 45 millimeter extrusion and press I, same thing, it brings that part in again. You'll see this a bit more later on when I do a bit more of the design. So from here, again, I can finish up the tabletop by pressing I over and over and over again. So that, with a process that might have taken 15 minutes to do normally in other CAD softwares, was done in about 10-15 seconds. The final thing I'm going to showcase before I jump ahead in the design process is the navigation. So you might have seen a little bit, I was moving the design around while I was working on it. The reason being that I can do this is the navigation tools. So the first navigation tool that I recommend learning is the ability to pan your design around. So if you right click on your mouse, it allows you to drag the entire design space. So it doesn't actually move the design, it just essentially moves the camera within the design space. The other option is to hold the scroll wheel on your mouse or hold the space bar and left click on screen. And what this does is allows you to rotate the design around that specific point in space. It's useful, say, if you'd like to then attach some extra plating underneath to make sure that the extrusions are secured, or work on a different side of it. The final way that you can navigate around is with the cube on the left, bottom left corner over here. So again, you can click on it or hold on it and drag around, or click the various faces to snap to that orientation. From there, another great shortcut that is used quite often by a lot of the application engineers here at Vention is the shortcuts R and F. What these do is they recenter and full screen your design. Say, for example, I'm working and my design is completely upside down at a random angle. And I don't want to have to play around with it too much to get it to the right orientation. I press R key, which recenters the design in the design space, and F, which will then full screen every part that I have in my design on my window. So with that, that is the basic of the navigation, as well as some of the great shortcuts they use in MachineBuilder. From here, I'm actually going to jump ahead and bring in a table that I pre-designed just for time's sake. In order to design this, it uses a lot of the same tools that I just used, such as reinserting other parts, attaching them, and resizing. Now for the table over here, I'm going to go over some of the things that I'm missing and showcase how it's going to be done. So if you look, I don't have any extra plating in the corner over here. As well, I'm missing some additional gussets that you see in the other corners and this one down here. I'll leave those blank for the moment for a specific reason later on. As well as underneath, maybe some leveling feet, so I can actually have this table resting on something proper. The first thing that I'm going to do at this point is bring in the front two attachment plates. So to do that, in this case, I do know which plate I'm already using, which is the 9-degree joint aluminum assembly plate. And I'll zoom in to give you guys a better picture of what I'm doing. So as you saw earlier, when I was importing parts, I did have the option to actually just drag it over and snap it to it. However, there is a different way to attach parts together that is very useful when you have more complex structures, or again, you're trying to get a bit more fine-tuned designing done. So in this case, I'm going to drop the plate into space over here and then use our point-to-point connection tool. Essentially what this does, it allows you to select specific points on two parts or sub-assemblies and attach them together. In this case, I'd like to attach this plate to the rest of the structure at the corner over here. So first, I select the corner hole on the plate and select the area that I like to attach it to. Again, once I've done this, I can cycle through the various orientation using my arrow keys, but usually the first attempt is the best one. So I can confirm over here. For the other corner, I'll showcase using the eye feature as well as showcase the smart design feature that does try to give the best orientation possible in the first try. From here, I'm going to do the rest of the plates, but you'll notice I'll be using a slightly different one. The reason being, I'd like to be able to attach this enclosure later on, so I'll be using these T plates instead. So going back to original design, I'll go to the T plate in the parts library on the left and bring it in. As you can see, it does assume that this is the most likely orientation that I was looking for, but since I actually want to face the other way, I do have to press the arrow key to get the one that I want. Over here, I'll finish this up by doing the rest of the corners, and it does showcase as I go through this how easy it is and how fast it is to design in MachineBuilder. Add that over there, and one final plate in the corner over here. And then again, using R and F to recenter and focus my design, I can do this over here. Now from here, I'm going to use one of the smart design features that is one of the greatest updates and additions to MachineBuilder. So as I said earlier, you did notice that I am missing some of the gussets in the corner over here. This was done intentionally. So if I go over to the top over here, we have a tool called the Automated Design Checker. If I click this, what it does is it scans through my design looking for standard errors that users often do, say as missing parts such as the gussets, making sure all the parts are properly connected. If you do have automation equipment, ensuring that you have a controller, maybe an e-stop for safety, etc. In my case, I am only missing those corner gussets over there. So I'll click the warning error over here and click on the message itself. What this does is it highlights the two parts that are in question and proposes the recommended part to fix this issue. So in my case, I know I am looking for the 45 by 45 millimeter gusset. I'll bring it to the corner. Once that's complete, you'll notice that the part has been fixed or the issue has been resolved. So again, I'll use the eye feature to finish off the design over here by snapping it into the corner. And once all the issues have been resolved, you'll notice that the errors go away. So I can close off the automated design checker and go back to my standard view. From here, the next thing that I like to showcase is the fact that the MachineBuilder does have a price of your design that updates in real time. So as I'm designing through, every part that I add to it does actually change the price. So for example, the next thing I like to add are the leveling feet in the bottom. So I'll go to the parts library, frame accessories, as well. You'll notice you'll find a lot of extra useful hardware such as drawer slides, handles, knobs, as well as the leveling feet. In this case, I'll click the leveling feet, rotate my design to get to the bottom, and snap it onto the bottom. Again, similar to the extrusions, if the parts are compatible, they will allow you to snap together. If they aren't, say if I try to attach the foot in the middle, it will mention that they are compatible, but unfortunately not in that configuration. So every time I add a foot, if you're looking right now in the top right corner, it does mention $9.79. When I add the foot, it updates the price in real time with the component that I have recently added. So Vention is very transparent. As you're designing, you know how much your design is going to cost if you so desire to order it upon completion. So that showcases that. The next thing that I'm looking to do is most likely change the size of my workstation. So if I go over to my original one, I notice it's a little bit larger to say accommodate this linear actuator, as well as give the robot a little bit more space to work in. First, I want to see how large my workstation is right now. To do this, I'll go over to the annotation section over here, and then drop-down menu have the measurement tools. In my case, I'm going to choose the measurement face to face, but you do have the ability to measure a specific edge, as well as a specific point to point. So in this case, measuring face to face, I'll select one side of my table and then go over to the other one. This one, I see my table is a total width of or length of 810 millimeters. In my case, I do want to make this a little bit bigger to allow for a bit more work. To do this, I can, normally in other design tools, you'd have to detach your entire assembly, delete some parts, resize the extrusions. Again, say you do parametrize them in SolidWorks and such, you do have to take quite a bit of work to do that. In this case, all I have to do is select the extrusions that are parallel to one another, or the ones that I do need to resize to make it wider, and resize them in one go. In this case, I will drag and drop my window. And this is another great feature of MachineBuilder that does follow other design tools. The drag window, if I drag from left to right, highlights everything that's inside the window. And if I drag from right to left, highlights everything that the window touches. So in this case, I've dragged all of these extrusions here. So that's all the parallel ones. Right click and select Resize Extrusion. In this case, I'm going to resize the internal dimension to get 945 and confirm by just letting go. As you can see, it actually brought the rest of the table with it. So again, something else that might have taken 5-10 minutes to do normally takes about 30 seconds. From here, I do have the measurement still on screen. I can delete it if I'd like, but if I do want to reference it later, I can just go to my annotations and toggle the visibility. From here, I'm going to actually finish off the top of the workstation by adding in the robot, the actuator, and the top enclosure. So going into the robot mounting section, I do know that I'm using the UR3 robot. So I'll find the universal robot section for mounting plates, select the UR3 plate, and bring it into my design. Again, selecting with the arrows to get the proper channel selected. And to recenter, it's easiest clicking it and dragging it over to the center of the design space. From here, what I'm going to do is bring in the linear actuator, which does showcase another great smart design tool that MachineBuilder has. So if I go into linear motion, I know I'm looking to have the 585 millimeter enclosed timing belt actuator. Click that, again, click and click interface, drop it into space, and you'll notice when this window on the left does appear over here. Essentially what this is our configuration assistant that does make sure that you're adding all of the necessary automation equipment for your actuator to function properly. In my case, I'm just going to switch over to the slightly smaller motor and press autocomplete. You'll see that auto automatically adds the sensors on either end and snaps the machine motion controller, which controls our actuators to my cursor. In this case, I'll bring it over to the outside of the structure over here, similar to my original design, cycle through the orientations, and then attach the e-stop to the front for safety. Once I'm done, I can click the Done button in the bottom left corner. So that showcases the configuration assistant. Next thing I'd really like to showcase that you saw a window that did pop up every once in a while is the part suggestion. So over here, normally, say to attach this to this table over here, I would have to go back to my parts library, click on structural and framing, scroll down to the appropriate gusset or connector that I'm looking to use to attach this to my structure, attach it, and then use maybe some point-to-point. In this case, if I click on an actuator, even on any other piece of hardware, it does give you the next part suggestion, which essentially are the most likely used parts that are used in conjunction with the one you've clicked. In this case, I'm going to use the gusset over here, which is what I was looking for in my parts library, and attach one to each of the 4 corners. Zoom around and attach it to the bottom over here. So once I've attached that, I can use the drag and drop that I've shown earlier, but this is a really great case to use the point-to-point connection tool again. So I select point-to-point, select the point that I would like to attach, and then select the point that I would like to attach it to. From there, I can cycle through the various orientations to get it in the right direction. And again, if I notice it's slightly off center, I don't have to redo that entire process. All I have to do is click on the gusset, cycle through the various degrees of freedom to get the entire system selected, and drag it over to the center of my table. Oh, dragged it a little too far. And there we go. So from here, I'd like to add in the robot itself. So I'll go back to the parts library, select robots. So these are the available robots that we do have on our platform. You can actually play around with in the design software itself. So from here, after selecting the UR3, I select the robot from the components that are required, and then snap it to the plate itself. You can also add the controller and the pendant as well if desired, but for this, I'm actually just going to skip over that. So from here, looking at the things that we're missing, there are 2 major things. We're looking for the enclosure over top, as well as the panel underneath the active shelving. So to showcase the next great feature, which is going to be copy and paste, I'll be going back to the other design, but to show that how copy pasting works, what I want to do is add the additional bracing required to properly secure my machine motion controller. So to do this, first, I'm going to select this bar over here, which looks like it does fit in between and already has the appropriate connectors. So to highlight them, I can use drag and drop, but if you'd like to select a bit more precisely, if you hold Control, you can then select individual items one at a time. If you select an extra part that you don't need, click it again to unselect it. From here, you can press Control-C, similar to any other software, such as Microsoft Word, Google Chrome, etc., and Control-V to paste it again. In this case, since it's a lot less fine-tuned designing, I can simply drag it to the location, general location I like to attach it to, press Enter, and then slide it up to its appropriate location. The next great thing about copy pasting is that you can actually copy paste in between designs. So rather than going through the whole lengthy design process of creating the top enclosure, I can go to my other design over here, go to the front face, select the parts that I would like to copy paste. Again, using the right to left drag window does highlight everything that I need. Press Control-C, go over to my original design, and Control-V to paste it into my design. As easy as that. So it's a great feature if you are working on multiple designs and would like to collate them into one afterwards. Again, using the point-to-point connection feature, you'll notice if you hover over, it does say point-to-point connection with the letter P. That essentially means that the letter P does work as the shortcut for that tool. In this case, snap it over here. I can cycle through the orientations, but obviously this is the one that I'm looking for. Now to finish off the design portion of this webinar, is to showcase how easy it is to generate panels. So panels usually are one thing that are a little bit more lengthy processes. You do sometimes have to open a new window, take some additional measurements, design it, bring it in, make sure there's no interference and such. Machine Builder, all that is done for you in one easy step. All you have to do is select the extrusions that you're looking to have the panel added to, right click on it, and select Create Panel. From there, we do have quite a few different plastic and wire mesh panels, as well as some aluminum and stainless steel. In my case, I'm going to select Poly Eco, which is a slightly thicker panel that's most commonly used for shelving. After, down in the mount hole sections, we can automatically add the fasteners and the holes required to actually secure your panel to your structure. In my case, I'm going to select countersink hole since it does give a cleaner finish overall. From there, I press generate, and it will generate the panel over the surface that I'm looking to work on. So you have the panel that's been generated, as well as the holes that have been added. So one thing you'll notice each here, it adds a hole around every major location that is required to make sure it is attached securely. From there, if I would like to attach it in it or add an additional hole, I can right click and select add countersink or through hole, depending on my preference, and add it again. One of the great features of the panel generation is that it actually automatically creates the cutouts around extrusions. Say, for example, I had a few more extrusions along the length over here or on the back, it will create those cutouts as well. So from here, that does finish the design portion of the webinar that I did want to showcase to all of you. The last thing that I really want to do is showcase how easy it is to publish and share with the community to get feedback on your designs. So in this case, I'll press save to save where I am at with my current design, then go in the top right corner and press share. So from here, I go down to publish to the community. In this case, I've already pre-filled the design name as well as the description for it. If you'd like, you can add specific tags. In this case, I'm going to leave it blank and press next. From here, just take various snapshot angles so that people do not actually have to open up the design to view it, but can view it from the browser window. Take snapshot, final front view, press next, and then from there, right now it's essentially generating the slot in the Vention website so that I can actually publish it. Once this is done, you'll get the preview of what your design will look like. Press publish project, and from there, it's actually been published to the Vention website, so other users can go look at it, get inspiration from it, even comment and like it if they do so desire. So that does cover a lot, or essentially everything that I did want to showcase on this webinar. I do know I did blast through quite a bit of information, but if you do have any questions or saw anything that you'd like to have elaborated on a bit more, feel free to ask them in the Q&A or the chat section now. Let me see over here. So for the moment, to give people a little bit of time to actually ask. Oh, I do see a few people. Oh, they are being allowed to participate if they so desire. So for the moment, if there are no questions for the moment, I will actually go over a few frequently asked questions or some issues that people do have while designing in the machine builder. The first thing I'm going to do is go over to the visual display, change back to my standard perspective view, and ask some of these questions. So one of the first major questions that sometimes people do get while designing is, how do I make sure that the structure can handle the weight of what I'm designing it for? So in this case, I'm looking for a UR3 robot as well as a linear actuator over here. There's quite a bit on here, but I want to make sure that my structure can actually handle the weight itself. So on our platform, if we go over to the resource section, we actually do have a deflection calculator. So we do have quite a few resources on a platform, such as tutorial videos, educational content, as well as how-to guides, both for designing and for all of our actuators and such. In this case, I like to make sure that the robot is properly supported underneath. So I can select the type of extrusion I'm using, the orientation that I'm using it in, loading, and then input the extrusion length and the applied load. From there, you can actually get quite a bit of detailed information about, or recommendation if you should say change the orientation or change to a slightly stronger aluminum extrusion profile. So that is one of the frequently asked questions. I'll just go over another one or two. If you guys do have any questions yourself, feel free to actually speak up as well. So one thing that does happen quite commonly in designing is, say, when you import a new design into your design space using, say, I or really just drag and drop, a lot of time it will highlight as blue over here. Sometimes the part does highlight as red, as you can see on screen. One of the reasons being is the machine builder does have a set space that you can actually import a design or a part into. One thing to note, so if I am very far away from the origin or the center of my design space, it won't let you actually put that part in to make sure that you are designing within a smaller space that does save room on your computer, since this is a cloud-based design platform. So that is one issue that does pop up, but the really easy fix is to just reorient your design in space using R and F to get back to the center.